What's up? How y'all doing? It's Jared. This is my half Flytanium out Benchmade 51 Morpho. And I put both of these are solid titanium V6 Flytanium scales. And I originally had them all on there, and I definitely liked the way that it flipped, but it was just a little bit too handle heavy for me. It flipped like my 63, which I did like, but I wanted something a little bit more nimble. This is the 51. I'm not flipping a 6X series. I'm flipping a 5X series. And so I wanted something that was just a little bit lighter and more nimble. As well, I like the way that it slips in and out of my pocket with the scale here. It just worked a little bit better than the titanium. The titanium just didn't quite have the pocket retention that this does here. And so I decided to put this scale back on here, but what that did is it actually made it so that I didn't have to repress in these pins, which was definitely a nice thing if you're familiar with the installation of these actual Flytanium scales. I kind of did that the lazy way and then left it set up like this. So it works really well. The balance point on this is just a little bit further back than the original 51. You can see that there. It's right about there, right where that scale is. This original here, well, this isn't an original. It's a Blade HQ exclusive. But you can see it's just a little bit more blade bias than this one here. I definitely like the way that this thing flips. I took them off. I put them back on. These scales, that's what I'm talking about. I took them off, and then I put them back on. And I took them off, and I put them back on. I just wasn't sure what quite to do, and this idea kind of hit me, and I thought for a really long time, is this going to do anything adverse in flipping? Am I going to throw off the weight? Am I going to throw off the balance of this knife by doing this and only having, one solid weighted scale on one side opposed to the G10 on the other? And I really don't think so, because this is a solid mass. It's bolted together and it's traveling around this pivot, right? So all of that mass and all of that weight is going to travel as a singular unit when I'm actually flipping it, right? So I don't think that I'm adversely affecting the balance of the knife, but I'm not a good enough flipper. I don't do anything crazy enough to actually know. Just from a physics perspective, I don't think that this has any negative repercussions on the actual flipping. It just feels a little bit weird in my hand, but I actually like the way that it feels because I know which side is which, right? I can tell which side where the blade is as far as which way it's lying in my hand, just because I do have that orientation for the differences in the scales, which is a nice thing. It does lead to a little bit of a problem with my latch. I haven't actually had any problems with this, but the Flytanium scales don't fit perfectly. You can see that there, and the G10 actually does. The G10 mounts up perfectly to that titanium liner there. And so what this leads to is when I actually do latch it, my latch is canted off to the side there, because this side is protruding out further than the opposite side. If I can get that to refocus in there, you can see that my latch is sitting off at an angle like this, and it's just because that scale isn't perfectly matched up to this side. And so there is some negative torsion on the actual latch itself. I don't know if that's going to come into play later and give me some problems. I don't know. And that's probably what you hear about with the Flytanium scales and the latch not being the best idea, it leading into problems, is just that extra amount of stress that's given onto that latch because those scales don't quite fit absolutely perfectly. And so it's not perfect. It does have a little bit of a problem there, but that's really the only problem I can actually come up with having these singular scale on each handle. I really like this knife. I went back and forth, and I eventually found my Goldilocks zone, which is the half Flytaniumed out Benchmade 51 with these V6 scales. I'm probably going to be ordering some of the scales that are actually milled. I think these are more of a showpiece. I don't know if these are designed for flipping as much. They might be. It might just be a preference thing, but really these scales, after I've had them for a while, I've flipped them for a bit, they scream platform for artwork for me. Anodizing, milling, custom work, something like that. Anybody who wants to do any sort of custom work to these scales or to, customize a Benchmade 51, these scales are just like a godsend for that, because it's a blank slate. I mean, you can do anything you want to it. And I'm probably going to be heat anodizing these at some point. It'll probably be these two. I'll just heat anodize two of them so that I can switch them out if I want them to be gray or if I want them to be whatever color I decide to go with. That's it. Benchmade 51, half Flytaniumed out. Y'all have a good one.